Welcome to Behavioral Grooves, the podcast that explores our human condition. I am Kurt Nelson.
And I'm Tim Houlihan. We talk with researchers and other interesting people to try to get a little better take on why do we do what we do?
Yeah, why do we do what we do, Tim? And in this episode, we're going to explore that idea through this concept of framing, the psychological principle that parents use, at least sometimes in their lives, when they're trying to get their kids to do their schoolwork, right? So rather than threaten the kids, the parents might say, if you finish your homework now, you'll have more time to play later.
And we know how that works out.
What? It doesn't work? Oh, yeah. Anyway, in this case, not so much. But we know that framing can have some very strong effects. We've seen it. There's lots of research out on there. We've all seen how ground beef is sold and marketed in the grocery store. It's not, it's either, it says 80% lean, 90% lean, right?
Yeah, but doesn't that mean if it's 80% lean, it's also 20% fat?
Right, but have you ever seen, that 20% fat out there, right? And they've actually tested this, right? So they showed one group an 80% lean label, and they showed another group the 20% fat label, right? Indicating, and they thought that, all right, when they asked those people questions, when they saw the 80% lean, that meat would be higher quality than the 20% fat group. When it's the same. It's exactly the same. But framing changes how we think about things.
So this is important stuff, and it's being used all around us all the time. And our guest, Mikael Klintman, joins us to talk about his book, Framing, the Social Art of Influence. We're going to discuss the ways that framing appears in the natural world. Like when you hear good music, you don't necessarily need a good frame to make it appealing, to environments where framing is used to persuade us, such as marketing and political arenas.
Yeah. Now, before we head over to our conversation, we just want to let you know and get ready for this framing that many people like you, our listeners, many people like you have referred us to their friends and to their colleagues because they get to laugh and learn in the same conversation.
Nicely done. Very nicely done.
Thanks. Yeah. I thought you would like that since you wrote it. There you go.
Okay, so with that, we invite you to sit back and relax with a double chewy shot of framing and enjoy our conversation with Mikael Klintman. Mikael Klintman, welcome to Behavioral Grooves.
Thank you so much. It's really exciting to be with you guys.
It's a pleasure to have you here today. And we'd like to start out by understanding an important question. Would you prefer to have dinner with your favorite musician or your favorite athlete?
Oh, certainly favorite musician. I'm more into music that I'm it's a way of saying I'm not very athletic but it's music is where I would feel at least stupid in the conversation. So that's
I understand that.
You have just made
You've
made a big friend with Tim. So that was not that these have a right or wrong answer, but for Tim, that was definitely the right answer on that one. Yeah. So, okay. Mikael, second speed round question.
Mm-hmm.
Are you a coffee drinker or a tea drinker?
I am a coffee drinker, but I make sure to follow my grandmother's advice, and she always said with horror in her face when we were brewing coffee for her. So I hope it's not too weak because that's dangerous. So weak coffee. It was like we would give her something really, really dangerous, and it had a special name that I don't think many Swedes even know. Lank, it's called, and that was, really dangerous stuff. Maybe it's psychologically dangerous. I don't know. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so you drink strong coffee. Is that what I'm
coffee.
hearing? This is not. Don't give me some light brownish color. I want it nice, dark, and rich, and really just bitter on my tongue. Yeah,
and it doesn't have to be this hipster snobby coffee. It could be instant coffee of the worst kind, but just several spoons. So that you can,
Okay, so it's chewy.
Chewy, chewy a little bit like.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I like.
Wow.
I'm probably on the other side of that. I will take the weak coffee, but I might have to change my mind now. You've got me something to think about here.
But is it true that American coffee is generally weaker, but is it true that the reason is that you used to drink that with food, so that it couldn't be too strong and steal all the flavor?
My parents drank coffee with every meal. I mean, that was the drink they had with breakfast. It was the drink they had with lunch, and it was the drink they often had with dinner. So yes, you would be having coffee and eating. It wasn't you had coffee by itself sometimes, but that was, at least for my parents, that was just part of the evening meal. They'd have their coffee cup and we'd have our glass of milk, and there you go.
Oh, I see.
Well, that's so interesting. Okay. Third speed round question, Mikael.
Okay.
Is this a true statement or a false statement? Framing can be used for good purposes just as easily as it can be used for not so good purposes.
Not well. It can be used for either good or bad purposes, and it is like electricity. You can use it for light bulbs in a kindergarten. I mean, who can be against that? Or it can be for a lethal weapon and so on. So it's amoral, but I think it's easier to use framing in a. No, maybe not. Well, nowadays it feels like it's easier to frame things in a bad way and towards misleading us. But we should. But yeah, a little bit more like that, because you can play on all these tribal aspects of framing in a.
Well, we're going to come back to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we will. That's very fascinating. Okay, last speed round question. If I have 2 weeks of coffee in here, and obviously it's not not hitting my brain synapses right here. Are metaphors a good way to help us frame things?
Yeah, I think they are. If we do it with good intentions.
Yeah.
But you can also mislead a lot with metaphors, because we tend to really think that the metaphor is exactly like the other thing here. And but in this book I try to push that towards the extreme and really use the framing metaphor the whole way, not just in a piecemeal way. But it is quite frightening how we can use metaphors in framing, so that people really associate, for instance, certain other groups with evil creatures that are less than human, and so on. And even when we understand that this is just a metaphor, it's still, the brain is bad at really understanding what's just because we understand something intellectually, we don't always do that emotionally.
Yeah, that's well said. So we're here with Mikael talking about his new book, Framing: The Social Art of Influence. And let's just start with this idea that you kind of posed, that framing is just about everything, right? And in behavioral science, well, first of all, let's just talk about that. Is framing everything? Is pretty much, can we sort of bring just about everything in our communication back to framing?
No, we can't. I mean,
Good.
I distinguish between three ways of perceiving framing, and one is, and all those, or the two first ones, they are part of our intuition in ordinary life. So one is, well, reality speaks for itself. It should. I mean, if you hear a good piece of music, you don't have to know who the musician is or something. It just goes right into your heart.
Good music is good music.
Good music
period.
is, yeah.
Right.
And what else? Well, and when you hear catastrophes about climate change, and you even see the floodings abroad and so on, that should be enough in order to make us, now we have to, get rid of at least one of our cars and fly less and really care about this and so on. But I don't think that's not really how we are built. And I'm talking about, I call it issue rational. So even if we can often feel that framing, know that reality speaks for itself, it doesn't really. I have a kind of silly example in the book about with the two British tourists who traveled to France and open one of those really nice cans with some kind of pate, and it says gourmet or gourmand and so on, and they eat it and love it. Oh, this is French food. Reality has, spoken for itself. Just feel the flavor. But then their daughter comes in and say, "Oh, you guys are eating cat food." But they loved it and enjoyed it, and that raises, okay, so maybe reality isn't everything. Behavioral economists often say that well, people are issue irrational. They should care about. There is a core. There is something real. That there are pensions that you want to maximize the level of, and so on. But we are kind of insufficient or bad computers. So we have all these biases, or we are influenced by all these framings. If we have a neighbor who we admire, who doesn't save for his pensions at all, with, okay, I'll do just what he does and so on. But it's not true that framing is everything. So my take on framing is that it's, of course, both the content, the reality in itself, and how it's framed that matter. But it's in a particular way.
Yeah. So, Mikael, I wanted to just your subtitle of your book is The Social Art of Influence, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, framing, the social art of influence.
Mm-hmm.
Can you help our listeners understand, when you're talking about framing, how does it connect with influence, and why did you subtitle your book The Social Art of Influence?
Mm-hmm. So I chose between various types of or terms for that. First, I was thinking that I should use something, the social tricks of influence and so on. But I thought it was better with art. First of all, I always find it a bit unfair when I go to art museums. Everyone talks about the one who has made the paintings. How about those who have done the
frames? Yes.
No one cares about them. And often, to be honest, the framings, both the frames and how it's framing and relation with painting is more impressive than the artwork itself, actually.
Don't tell the artist that.
No. But so that's one thing. And another thing is that there is something not magical, but there is something with the techniques, framing techniques you can use that really changes our perceptions of things. You can, for instance, if you sometimes if someone you can buy really ugly shoes, and if you say, well, this is ugly fashion, it's a new thing going on, which is really hot in Paris or so, you can make people admire those shoes.
So Crocs, right? I mean, Crocs are definitely what you just talked about. They designed Crocs as a, like, this is the worst type of shoe you could ever develop for a film, and they actually like use that as like, these are it. Anyway, I apologize. Keep going.
No, that's exactly that. And
well, let me go back to something that you mentioned, this idea that one of the ideas was possibly, this idea of tricks. It is framing just kind of a bag of tricks.
It can be used as tricks. You can make ugly things seem good. You can make things that people first felt that was a really bad thing, a really good thing, and so on. And you can make people who are particularly virtuous and do all these great things for the environment. They are often framed as, oh no, they are. Or what do you call it in English? They think they
evil.
are perfect. The evil, and you think that they are perfect. They think they are perfect, and so on. You can use it strategically with all these with various tricks, but a lot of our framing is also taking place. We do it without thinking about it, and there is not always this strategic aspect of it. So much of it in daily life, we take most things as it's normal, as what's always happening here, and so on.
Yeah. Mikael, in the book, you talk about rough and smooth framing.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain what you mean by that for our listeners?
Yeah. So I thought, so one dimension or one element of framing is what I call frame texturing. I actually went into a framer. Do you call it a shop where they actually do
they frame the art?
And I asked them,
Yep.
okay, hi. So what can you do with? How can you change a frame, physical frame? And they helped. He helped me come up with these 4 ways of reframing, and this with rough and smooth framing I call frame texturing.
Yep.
And by that I mean the rough framing is the the negative aspect of it. Could be something that seems dangerous, and another group that seems dangerous that we don't know yet, and so on. But texturing is the basic binary way of.
Well, you also use some other positioning of frames, like up, down, sideways. How do these aspects of framing fit into the discussion?
So frame positioning is how we, what is really the issue at stake? What are we talking about here? And it could be, for instance, if we see fast food or junk food. We all love that in some ways, and it tastes really good. But then we all have also been informed since we were little kids how unhealthy it is, how bad it is. So we have that knowledge and that information. So our normal framing of junk food is that it's it tastes good, but it's unhealthy, and we won't. Perhaps if we continue eating that, we won't live as long. Maybe we'll shorten our lives with a couple of years. Who knows? But then they have talked to teenagers, guys who are not. I was one of them, notorious for eating all this junk food. And they compared. They tried to reframe or frame junk food in two ways. They didn't use the term junk foods because that's, of course, normative in itself.
Framing in and of itself, right?
Yeah. So one framing was, okay, you guys probably know that junk food is unhealthy, but do you know that you really need to stop now eating it? You cannot wait until you're 30 or something, because it will start to clog your veins or whatever. And those guys said, oh, that's too bad. That's a shame, but it's so good. And that's far away in the future. But then they tried another framing, and that was, okay, did you know that the industry, the junk food industry, they have the best psychologists in the world, most well paid, who really fine-tune the marketing and the ads, so in order to deceive you, or
at the very least, persuade.
Fool you. Persuade. Yeah. At the very least, persuade. So they are really pushing you and pressuring you, and I think they could show some deception as well. And this industry, they also put a lot of pressure on policymakers so that they won't regulate anything and so on. So they are really, they're not on your side, they're against you, and they are trying to deceive you. And that really kicks our ancestor foremothers concern of because it was far more important in hunter-gatherer society, where we have lived the longest, not to be deceived than to eat a little bit less healthy, so we can become 85 instead of 88 or something, because people lived until they were 30 perhaps. So unhealthy food was not an issue, but being deceived was really dangerous, because then you would die an unnatural death.
Yeah, that's fascinating, right? Again, as we think about the different types of ways to influence, as you're talking about here, right? So the framing of healthy and living long isn't as impactful on these teenage boys as the framing of you're being deceived. These guys are bringing in these high-powered social psychologists like Tim and myself, right? And we're deceiving you.
Right. Okay.
That's what we are, right?
Yeah.
And Mikael, I think the other piece and again, as we're talking through this, you bring up about the size of frames and how, again, the way that you think about this, you talk about frame expansion versus frame contraction. Thought that was really interesting. And can you talk again for our listeners a little bit about what is frame expansion versus frame contraction?
Yeah. So frame expansion is when we feel like in group, or the issue at stake is wider than we previously thought. So one very nice example is how our moral circles have expanded in the last 200 years, and so partly on the basis of utilitarian thinking, with Bentham and so on, who said that, well, we have more in common with non-human animals than we think, and that was even before before Darwin. So it was not that we were biologically different, but humans and animals, they're similar in that we can feel pleasure and pain, and therefore an animal should also have the right to not to be tortured or exploited, so that the animal hurts the animal. And we can see it in politics too, how countries, I don't know if you, in the Swedish history, you needed passports everywhere.
Hey Groovers, quick break from the conversation to talk about something we don't bring up enough on the show.
Yeah, that's right. When we're not behind the mic, we're working with organizations to apply behavioral science in ways that actually move the needle for leaders, teams, and whole cultures.
So whether it's designing smarter incentives, boosting engagement, setting goals that actually stick, or helping teams navigate change, we bring real science to real workplace challenges.
And we don't just talk theory. Our approach blends research-backed insights with hands-on strategies that drive results. Now, we've seen small behavioral shifts lead to big wins in Fortune 500 companies and scrappy startups and even in mission-driven nonprofits.
Yeah, and we bring the same curiosity, creativity, and care to our client work that we bring to every episode of the show.
Really, I think people might want more than what we bring to the show.
Yeah, you probably have a point there. You're probably right.
Okay, so we'll bring more care and creativity to our work with you and your teams than what we do on the show.
Yes, more care. So if you're ready to build stronger motivation, better team dynamics, and maybe even make your workplace a little more groovy,
yeah, reach out to us. Grab us on LinkedIn or Facebook, or just drop us a line. We'd love to help you and your team find your groove.
I was just going to say, so given that, because obviously in the world today, there's a lot of the political aspects going on. So there's the expansion of saying we are more, right? So our in-group now becomes a broader in-group, and we can bring that in, as you said, the human aspects around animals, but also just, as you said, within Sweden, used to be our town or our thing, and now it's like Sweden as a whole, and maybe even now Europe as a whole. But there's the contraction side of this as well, right? Which is reducing that. So taking this broad and bringing it down. And correct me if I'm wrong in this assumption, but I'm looking at the United States political world where we're in. We used to have it was, we're Americans, we're this, and it feels like there has been a concerted effort to contract that. No, we are Republicans or we are Democrats, and if you're on the other, you're almost not an American if you don't believe in my group, and so we're shrinking that. Is that a example of contraction?
I think that can be an example of a contraction. I think, in a way, contraction is inevitable of some kind. I mean, we all want to be idealistic and let's be one united world where I had this. I went to some. I wasn't brought up in a Christian family, but somehow I had a painting where the globe and people held hand all around this. It was really nice.
Right.
I should have it. It makes me happy. But
it's world peace, right? I mean,
world
that's
peace.
Truly world peace.
So that's really nice. But as a cynical sociologist, I need to recognize that expansion rarely happens without any contraction at this in another way, or subtle or implicit ways. But in the U.S., I guess you could say that this is some kind of contraction that has taken place, which is and we see it in Europe today as well. And I've been working also on issues of disinformation and knowledge resistance and so on. And people often ask, okay, so what should we do about it? Then I often say that, which is a very tough thing to do, that we should try to shape a society, if that's possible, so that each of us belongs to several identity groups. We're not just one. I mean, I'm a Swedish academic, middle class, blah blah blah, and therefore I believe this and have this aesthetic and this view of truth and so on. But when you go with your kids to their soccer training, you meet one group there, and
right,
and when you where you live. You have houses of various, kinds,
Yep.
and so on. So there could be rich and poor and so on. So that's probably to try to blend and make it so that each of us belong to more group would be better.
Is that part of you talked about, you had a whole chapter on social elasticity, and so that's what I'm hearing you is talking about that, and then again you brought in, I thought was really fascinating, Robin Dunbar's 7 pillars of friendship into that chapter, and as you were just talking, you can kind of see how some of those fit in. Is that where you were going with that last example?
Yeah, it was. So that's right. So Dunbar's 7 pillars of friendship.
Yep.
They have studied thousands of people and seen what's most important in order for them to trust someone else and feel like that person and I really belong together. And there you have music taste actually comes very, very high. They don't know
Thank
why.
goodness.
Thank goodness. Yes. And humor, that you can understand each other and where you come from and so on.
Yep.
And maybe that's why where you should try to, by mixing people in new ways, so that I don't just listen to music that a middle class academic listens to, but also another. I had some friend of mine, my 17-year-old. He wanted me to listen to death metal and so on, and I'm trying to like that. I'm working
we
on
need
it.
we need to get Tim to expand his musical genres outside of pre-1978 music. So,
Well,
okay,
there's a lot of great music written from the 14th century and the 15th
that's an
century
inside
and the
joke.
16th
Sorry,
century.
Mikael. That's an inside
Okay.
joke.
That's a different joke.
All right.
I wanted to get back to something you mentioned earlier. You brought up the term behavioral economics, and you talked about Danny Kahneman. And to what degree, like behavioral economics has thought about framing, oftentimes in losses and gains or in positioning things, like equivalence framing, like 10% of the people will die versus 90% of the people will live from a particular intervention, or emphasis framing. This is fast versus this is efficient. And so I'm wondering, to what degree is framing just the context in which we are making these decisions?
And you mean how we formulate things, the way they do their research? So it's an important part of it. But as a sociologist, I want to look broader at framings, but because sure, in specific experiments, you can see this, that is the glass half empty or half full, and the 10% risk of dying versus 90% of surviving and so on. So that works with certain isolated examples, but in the issues I'm interested in, it often have to do with really supporting businesses, but also politics, so that environmental issues can be taken more or into account. It can be both left and right wing politics, and those more complicated things. And also, when it comes to so-called wicked problems, knowledge disputes that where all the ideologies are intertwined, then it becomes tougher. Framing is often necessary, or reframing is necessary, but it's not sufficient. So almost always, if you want to have some kind of social change, you need combinations. So I bring in, for instance, the example of in Amsterdam that they were very progressive in having bike lanes where they used to be only where cars were dominating and so on. And first, when I started to read about this, I saw that there was so much focus on framing, and the interesting framing that really gained cultural resonance was child murder. So that what the cars are doing is they murder children. It sounds
it's terrible. It's horrible.
terrible. Yeah, it's horrible.
But it's dramatic and vivid, and it
it's
caught
dramatic
people's
and
attention.
vivid. Yes, and there were, of course, parents out demonstrating, and they also painted. Physically, they reframed the streets with white colors. So and those
the outlines of the bodies of children on the street, as to where they would have died, right?
Did they really do that? Well, yeah, maybe they did that too.
I thought it was just bikes.
It was mainly bikes,
created,
but
they created bike lanes that, like, just by spray painting of the bikes on the lanes. That's what I remember.
Actually, it wouldn't surprise me if they also painted dead bodies, which was horrible. But so this sounds like a wonderful, wow, framing can do so much. But if we think that was in the mid 70s and early 80s, well, they had the oil crisis too, and the huge geopolitical aspects of we really need to reduce our oil use, and that converged with okay, we need more people to ride their bikes and feel safe about it. So it's politics and economics and various pressures that and framing is one part of it.
Yeah, I'm just curious that in all of this framing, there's this wonderful genetic aspect to it, but of course, lots of environmental things about it. As in the world that we live in. You live in Sweden, and I'm curious about in what ways has Swedish life framed the way that you look at the world?
Oh, and this is an effect of framing that the world I live in and I take for granted, so it's hard to see it. I think what's particular in my the framing here is that, for instance, it's really important to say and feel that you care about environmental issues and health issues and so on, and equity and equality and so on. So it's very egalitarian, and there are some things that are politically correct that are really expected of you, but sometimes, and I find that fascinating, that it's sometimes enough to say that to just show that you are aware of that your consumption patterns and so on, they're bad towards the environment. You believe in the climate change is taking place, and you believe you are part of harming biodiversity and other things. But that seems sometimes more important than actually doing something about it. And that's in my socioeconomic class, because I've interviewed many other groups, also working class and unemployed and so on, who don't talk so much about environmental issues and health issues. They just live with less negative impact on the environment.
You had a story in the book about a dinner party that you had as a 20-year-old, and this is reminding me of this, right? Where you each brought some friends, and you realized, oh, this might not work because I have there's one really conservative woman and then one really left-leaning guy, and there's going to be this fighting and different pieces, and it kind of happened that way, right? They were drinking, they ended up having these conflicts, but in the end, they were going back and forth, having a great time, and then they called you out as like, don't you guys believe, and I'm going to get this wrong, but it was something along the lines like, you don't have strong enough opinions, you don't believe in things, don't you think this is it? And they left and went off, as you said, maybe went to a bar and had a great time talking about this, and you guys were sitting back and like having a like, oh, well, all right, glad they're gone because now it's there. But then you were like, made you rethink and like, yeah, maybe we do need to actually just maybe take a stand. Did I capture that?
You really did. And that was also quite a Swedish setting. Our worry, or my worry, when is she coming and he coming? Because I have some Italian friends who, when they arrange for a wedding or something, how should people be sitting? They try to. Okay, they are so different. These two, they should sit. That will be interesting for them to sit next to someone.
It's very intentional.
Yeah. So that will
vastly
be
different than the Swedish, like my heritage too. It's like, they're on the other side of each other.
Yes, we want consensus, and everyone should feel good and so on. But this with a left-wing, politically active guy, and the right-wing, moderate right-wing woman, that really shows the power of meta framing, how it is possible to unite even when we seem very, very different, because obviously they had something common that the rest of us selfish TV watching people
sitting on the couch, not doing anything with our lives while we're out here saving the world, even though we disagree on it. We're actually active, and we're living our beliefs out. Yeah.
Yes, so that was really fascinating.
We need to get to maybe the most important kind of questions that we're going to ask, and this is about music.
Yeah.
So, are you a person that likes to listen to music while you work?
I do. I listen almost always to music when I work, but it's very specific. I mean, I played instruments and been singing, and my wife and I met in a choir. That used to be, that's a Swedish thing too. It used to be the third most common way of meeting your partner in Sweden, before internet and so on. It's not like, it's not a cool, it's kind of cheesy, choir. It could have been on Mount Everest on the top or something. Yeah. But so we have a lot of music here, but it's very important that the music isn't too complicated. I love classical music, but it shouldn't be too, it could not be a singer, because then I start to listen to words, the lyrics. Yeah. And it can't be, I tried Bach, but it's too complex. I found my very favorite for working, and that's Telemann.
Telemann, yeah.
Telemann, German it was in the what was it, 17th, 18th century?
I think 18th century,
Yeah, and he's so great for several reasons. First of all, he wrote so much. He wrote
huge
more
body
music
of work
than Bach, Handel, Beethoven, and Mozart combined. He did.
I've heard
that his wife divorced him. She didn't think he had balance in his work leisure.
Not a good work-life balance, huh?
No, not really. So it's great, and it's great music that fits most.
Wow.
So I do that, but then when I'm not working, then I love, for instance, I think she's forgotten almost, Randy Crawford, the singer, the soul singer, Randy Crawford. Do you know?
Okay, not ringing a bell for me, but that's
Rio de Janeiro Blue. Yeah,
yes,
Rio de Janeiro, and she's so brilliant because she sings between the black and white notes. I mean, the quarter notes, so she has a higher musical vocabulary than anyone I know, and it's absolutely no auto tuning, and it's full control. So that's wonderful. And then I like Kool and the Gang and those things. And Phil Lynott, Thin Lizzy is also great.
I'm not hearing the speed metal reference that they were trying to get you into.
No, I'm going to have 10 extra minutes of that. But actually, I should about music. Actually, my plan was, in my first draft of this book, was actually started with a music example about framing. But I had to take it away, and I'm just going to mention it briefly. So the setting was, and it's a true story, a subway in New York City, Grand Central Station or something, in the subway. So 4 guys in their late 40s are pulling up their guitars, basses, and drums, and so on. And they look kind of rugged and untrimmed facial hair, and one has a blue cowboy hat, and
so they look like musicians.
They look like buskers,
bum musicians,
buskers, and they started to play, and that sounds good, and the singer is also good, and the singer singing, I have climbed the highest mountains, da 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 da, the U2 song and so on, and people listen, and that's pretty good, but it's a lukewarm atmosphere, and people take the trains and so on. Not much happens, but it sounds good. It sounds authentic. And then a 5th guy is screaming, "Oh, that isn't working. Plan B, plan B." And then Bono, of course, rips off his mustache, and Jimmy Fallon, who's from the Tonight Show, shouting and moving around, and Adam Clayton's face beard flies off, and then you have the edge, and so on, and people, the audience becomes ecstatic, almost in shock. They start screaming and cheering euphorically, taking pictures and singing, and forgot that I'm not going to take the train. The boss will understand me. I'm going to.
I have U2 here, right?
It's U2 here, and so on. And I try to frame this as a reframing from, buskers into U2. But that really was kind of difficult, because it's kind of sad too, isn't it? If music is, we said earlier that music is the core, reality speaks for itself, and people were completely, lukewarm, and then
it kind of goes against that to a certain degree, that reality speaks for itself, because the music didn't change. It was the perception of the people playing the music that
and they played in the real qualities. So it really made us think, maybe the core is actually the fame and superstardom of these guys, and the music is just some frame. I don't know, but it became too confusing.
Mikael, it has been absolutely wonderful, and I'm sorry our time has kind of come to an end here, but thank you so much for being a guest on Behavioral Groups.
Thank you so much. Great to talk to you.
Welcome to our grooving session, where Tim and I share ideas on what we learned from our discussion with Mikael, have a free-flowing conversation, and groove on whatever else comes into our framed brains.
We are framed. Boy, aren't we? We are, like, nothing happened in our brains without some kind of framing, some kind of reference.
No, I was talking about being framed. We actually didn't do that evil thing that people said we did. We were framed, Tim. We were framed. We didn't rob that bank. We didn't say that mean thing. It was all framed. No, yes, you dirty rat. There is this. It is fascinating to me when we actually peel back the layers of how much framing, and again, it's not necessarily purposeful framing. It's not like people are, I'm going to frame it. It's just framing happens whether we want it or not. It's part of just how we view the world, and yet it has such a deep impact on us. And I think that is something I know in the communication work that I do with organizations that I often try to convey, and I don't know if it gets conveyed always that well. So I need to frame it better, I guess. So
I'd also say that Mikael has is a sociologist, and he spent a lot of his life thinking about the sociological implications of this, society, writ large. I think there's also a lot of work, as you mentioned, in the corporate world, not just in internal communication, but also in persuasion. And framing does play a role in persuasion. It frames a role in, as you said, how we speak to each other, how we communicate. Yeah. So framing, I think, has really kind of long tendrils that go out into the world. And in some ways, they're contextual, right?
Yeah.
The experience that Mikael brought up about Bono and U2 and with Jimmy Fallon, they're in the New York subway, and nobody recognizes them until they pull off their disguises. And Mikael asks a reasonable word, like, is their fame actually based on the quality of their music, or is it about their persona? Or how much does context have to do with it? And I think that's a fair question, because the same thing happened with Jimmy Fallon and Green Day, and we've talked about Joshua Bell from the New York Philharmonic, who is he is the first violin for the New York Philharmonic, and he went down into the New York subway and played for 60 minutes, and only one person recognized him.
No disguise there. He just went down. He was just
right.
He's like
right.
And he had like he had $1 million, violin or something that he's down there with, right? But that's true. I mean, is it part of the experience of framing? So are you seeing him in the New York, Philharmonic and the orchestra hall that he's in,
right,
versus a subway? And so is it the music, or is it the other factors that surround the music? There's a mythology around U2. I mean, I've, bought into it. I've seen them 5 times in my life, right? So, there is that aspect of the myth being as larger than real life. And so part of that comes into play. And for all we know, that's a cover band down there playing that music, and they play it really well, but it's not U2. Do I care? I mean, it's like putting a record of their music on, and all right, great, I'm listening to it, but do I need to really pay attention and be wowed by it?
Well, and that's not why we go to concerts.
No.
Right? As much as the Eagles absolutely wanted to have a live performance replicate, to the nth degree, their in-studio performances, it's still not the same.
No.
A live performance is a live performance. You just can't not have that. There's something special about what happens there. So, so how do we use, let me ask you this, Kurt, how can we use framing to improve our groove, to get into our groove in the world? What could we do?
Yeah, I mean, so framing matters, right? We know that. We talked about the meat, but also, I mean, framing matters from the perspective of how a doctors in their diagnosis and prescription of medicines and different things, and how we frame it. So be aware. So first off, I think, finding your groove is like, be aware. Be aware of how you are framing things, because it will have an impact on those around you. And that then comes back to you, right? And so I think there's some other pieces of there.
So when you go to the gym, like, you start by framing your trip to the gym as, I'm going to hate this. I hate working out. It's drudgery. The only reason I'm going is because Aaron will know if I don't go.
That's exactly it. Yeah. And to what you're talking about, I think, is this idea of expectation effects, right? So you're framing how, and I talk with my kids about this all the time, because you see it. Well, I don't like this. Well, of course you don't like it, because you're stating you don't like it. You haven't even given it a chance. And I mean, that's how they frame. They frame it as, I don't like it, therefore they're not going to like it.
And they're right.
And they're right. Yes, and they're right. and I mean, you can actually look at this. I think there's, the expectation effect of, like, some of the Ali, Crumb's work of, I mean, the bodily response that we have changes in how we, and so if we frame something as being high caloric or being lean and healthy for us, our body changes, even if it's the same thing that we're ingesting. So that's one. But I think the other piece is that you can frame things to, like, how I'm going to view, like, broadening my connections with other people, right? So I can frame, like, I'm an outgoing person and will talk to people on the subway, or
or not.
or not, right?
Or not. You could just basically just limit the social groups that you have and who you spend time with, or you could actually choose a framing that says, I'm a really interesting person. I have all these different likes, right? Like I love music, or I love reading, or I love games, or sports, or adventure. And I could have different social groups that could actually bring me different perspectives in the world to make me a broader person, kind of intellectually and emotionally as well, too.
Right. And again, there you talked about going, setting expectations about going out to work out, right? But you could also frame going to the gym not as a horrible thing, but it's an indulgence. I get to go to the gym, And you can tie that with Katie Milkman and her temptation bundling, and you can go, I get to go to the gym and I get to listen to, this U2 music that I want to listen to now because, they're on there. And that's the only time I get to.
I get Dark Side of the Moon, start to finish, uninterrupted, in the order that it was recorded.
Exactly. There you go.
Yeah. What else?
I want to bring this up because we talked about this, but you want to talk a little bit about some of the musicians that he talked about.
There were a couple of musicians that I thought were really worth noting, and we don't oftentimes groove on musicians, but when we were talking to Mikael, he brought up Telemann and said he's one of the most prolific composers in history. And I had forgotten this from my days in music school, but he is the most prolific composer in all of history. Like, nobody has written as much music as Telemann ever. Like, he's written more music than Bach, Beethoven, and Mozart combined. Like, he puts all of modern composers, the Beatles, to shame. They have nothing close to Georg Telemann. And so, if you're at all interested in listening to the guy who has written more, and by the way, it's really good music. It's
not just AI crap, right? It's
not. No, but if you're interested in checking out the world's most prolific musician, Telemann's whole series of table music, which you called a Tafelmusik, table music, is it's kind of a mix of chamber orchestra and orchestral music, and there's a lot of short pieces. There's a whole bunch of pieces that are 2 to 4 minutes long. So it's kind of like listening to pop music in terms of length. And if you wanted to get a feel for the depth of his talent, check out the Tafelmusik stuff, and anything within that realm, I think, would be pretty interesting.
So is that why he's so prolific? Because he just wrote 2-minute little pieces? And just,
no, he wrote operas and large scale symphonies that, take 20 minutes to get through, and all that. So
okay, very cool. Yeah, no, check that out.
The other artist that caught me off guard, and not oftentimes am I unaware completely, but Randy Crawford was totally off my radar, and she is an American blues singer. She's been partnering with like the greats of jazz and rock and roll for the past 50 years. And I was listening to her stuff. She's got a record called Live at Abbey Road that she partnered with Joe Sample on, who is one of the jazz greats in American music. And it's got some great tracks on it. Mikael actually brought up Rio de Janeiro Blues, which is kind of a classic pop/blues tune. Her rendering of it is outstanding. So I just want to say, check out some Randy Crawford. Make your life a little better today.
You can frame this as an adventure into music. There you go.
I love that. Yes. All right. Is there anything else that you wanted to bring up here, Kurt?
No, I think that's a wrap, man. I think that's good. So.
Okay. Okay, good deal. Well, a big thanks to Mikael for his research and his book. We appreciate scholars digging deep into the world that we live in so we can better understand how we could make better decisions, live better lives.
Yeah. And a big thanks to everyone else, you included, listeners who write reviews, leave us ratings, or share behavioral grooves with a friend or a colleague. We so appreciate that. It is really from the bottom of our heart. We know it's just a little gesture, but it means a lot to us.
With that, we hope you take some of Mikael's comments this week and you use them to go out and find your groove.